Hey everybody, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor this week, Queerly Beloved. They are your one-stop shop for all your queer merchandise. They are a queer Christian-owned company that sells awesome merchandise. You should go over to their website, queerlybeloved.shop, and buy some of their hats or their shirts or their buttons or stickers and support them because they're doing an awesome ministry that shows how God loves all people. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now. It says, "I am a fruit of the Spirit." And I really like this shirt because when I was growing up, I got called fruity a lot. And I think this is a really cute way of saying, so what? Head over to their website, check out their merchandise, and buy something in support of Queerly Beloved. Thank you so much, Queerly Beloved, for your support. In the Bible, names are incredibly important, and names have several different functions. Some names serve as waymarkers for important events or places in salvation history. So for example, you have the story of Jacob when he wrestled with God. After he wrestled with God, he named that place Peniel because it was the place where he saw the face of God, and Peniel means the face of God. Some names are even prophetic, indicating what God is intending to do through someone in the future. For example, Jesus' name means Yahweh will save. And then there are other names, like the name Christian, which at first was probably meant to be derogatory, but over time became adopted by Christians as a positive thing. There are even times in the Bible where humans give names to God. For instance, where Hagar gives God the name, the God who sees, because God saw the problem that she was having with her mistress Sarah. There are a lot of different names in the Bible and a lot of different reasons why those names were used. But one thing they all hold in common. Names were important in the Bible because they serve to identify various people or people groups or places or events. In the Bible, names matter. Identities matter. In our world, names matter. And identities matter. Our identities reveal the various aspects that make up who we are. They sort of give a picture of who we are, who we have come to be, and none of those identities are unimportant, and not one of those identities is more important than another. All of our various identities comprise who we are as individuals. For example, there are a host of different identities that comprise who I am. I am Black, American, Christian, a runner, tall, an extreme extrovert, an aspiring philosopher, a brother, a son, a lover of bunnies, a pastor, a Star Wars fan, celibate, and gay. And it's when it comes to that last identity of mine that a lot of Christians start to have problems with identity. Because of the stigma surrounding queer identity and because of the lack of knowledge that a lot of Christians have about queerness, Christians who hold more conservative views on sexuality chafe at the idea of queer people identifying with their queerness. So they have a problem when they hear people identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, pansexual. Am I missing anything else? Because of their discomfort with queer identity and because they don't have much knowledge about it or an understanding of it, many Christians long for the day that queer people will either become straight or cisgender, or they'll just stop identifying as being queer. And it's exactly then that you'll hear a lot of Christians start to say, and you won't hear it any other time really, your real identity is as a child of God. That's your primary identity. And any queer person who's watching this right now knows exactly what I'm talking about because almost all of you have probably heard that when you came out to somebody. However, that kind of treatment actually spells out disaster for not only queer people, but for non-queer people. And I want to give you 5 biblical reasons why that is the case. Reason number 1. The book of Revelation chapter 12 verse 11 says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. Each one of us has a testimony about how Jesus has worked in and through our lives. My testimony as a gay man, and indeed all queer people's testimonies, are uniquely shaped by our queer experience. So to tell us that we should hide our queer identity is to tell us that we should hide part of how Christ has been working in our lives. By telling us that we should hide our queer identity, you're actually telling us to minister to people from a place of inauthenticity. But as a person who was in the closet for many years and has been serving as a pastor, I can tell you that serving from a place of inauthenticity is not effective. Reason number 2. Inside of all of us is the desire to be known and to be loved for all that we are. We want to know that no matter what someone finds out about us, that they're not going to go anywhere, that you're going to stick around, that you're going to continue to love and to pour into us no matter what. Unfortunately, the ways that Christians have treated queer people demonstrates that they don't really know how to love queer people effectively. And this can be seen in the fuss that Christians often make over queer identity. Many Christians, whether in word or in action, say to queer people, "We'll love you, we'll care for you, we'll do all these things just as long as you stay in the closet and don't mention that one thing about yourself." But is that really love? I remember a few years ago in 2017 when I was working as a pastor for a summer before I went to seminary, I came out to the congregation I was working with. Terrible decision, but it's what I did. A huge controversy ensued in this church and all eyes were on me. One day I was talking with one of the church members and he was sharing with me some of his thoughts about the fact that I had just come out to the congregation. And his problem wasn't methodology, was it the right time or the right place or the right people? His problem was that I came out in the first place because my coming out as a queer person forced him to have to actually evaluate if he really practices what he preaches when he says that he loves all people no matter what. And I was blown away that he said this so nonchalantly. But really, how many Christians do this? I've done it before. And a lot of Christians do that. As long as you don't talk about this controversial, taboo topic or share this aspect of yourself, we can get along just fine. We'll love you. But that's not really love. Imagine if Christ had that kind of attitude. Because in reality, one of our identities as humans is that we are all sinners. What if Christ decided, oh, I don't like that part of their identity. I don't like that identity in humans. Therefore, I'm not going to associate with them. Where would we be? And if Christ did not do that to us, where do we get the audacity to believe that the way someone else identifies should be the reason why we should withhold our love or our respect from them? Point number 3. I want to tackle the idea that being a son of God or a daughter of God, a child of God, is this primary identity that we have when we become Christians. One day I was talking with a church administrator who should have hired me, but we're not going to talk about that. I was sharing with him my experience as a queer person. I referred to myself as a gay Christian because that's what I am. And after about 15 minutes of sharing my testimony, all that he said back in response to me is, just make sure you call yourself a child of God. Now, to a lot of people, that probably sounds like, wow, isn't that wonderful? He sees you as a child of God. In reality, it's a cop-out because dealing with queer identity is too difficult for a lot of Christians, or at least they make it too difficult. And so they use the child of God identity as a way of saying, you know what, we don't even really need to talk about the fact that you're gay. We're just going to call you a child of God and sweep that under the rug. Unfortunately, we use the identity of being a child of God as kind of a closet that we keep LGBT people locked up inside. In reality, being queer and being a child of God are not at odds. They're not mutually exclusive. When we become children of God, when we become Christians, that does not become our primary identity. We still retain all the other identities that we've had before. We just gained this new one. And actually, you see this in the life of Christ. I mean, Jesus was the Son of God. But when he came down to earth, he was a man, a Jew, a construction worker, a son, a brother. Him being the Son of God did not erase his other identities. What's really interesting is that throughout the Gospels, Jesus actually downplayed and kept secret the fact that he was the Son of God. But yet somehow we have come to believe that that should be our primary identity. Now that is not to say that we're not children of God. We are children of God. But we need to be very careful that we don't say to queer people, oh, your true identity is as a child of God, so as to kind of not have to address the fact that they're still queer. We need to make sure that we don't use something so holy and as sacred as being called children of God to veil our insecurities or our fears with queer identity. Reason number 4. A major reason why Christians need to stop fussing over queer identity is because we are supposed to live missionally. However, unfortunately, we have become more concerned with appeasing our sensibilities than we have been with relating to the world. Very often we expect the world to situate itself according to our sensibilities and what would make us feel comfortable. When I read the book of Acts and I see the stories of the great discomfort, the persecution that Christians went through, and then I look at how we operate today where we expect everything to make us comfortable, I wonder how many of us would actually have been able to do what the ancient Christians did back then by depriving themselves of the need for comfort. We live in a world of sin. We live in a world where we're supposed to feel discomfort if we're children of God, but yet we expect that the world should operate in a way that should make Christians feel comfortable. And this causes us to not be able to effectively minister to people and to fulfill our Christian mission. However, Paul in the Bible saw his responsibility, his sense of Christian mission, as becoming like the people he was seeking to serve. And this is what he says: "Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jew I became like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings." Notice how Paul's concern was for the other and not for his own comfort. How do you think that approach should affect our approach to LGBT plus identity? When it comes to Christian mission, our comfort should not be the objective. Our mission as Christians is to get to know people where they are, to minister to people where they are, and to seek to know people for all that they are. Reason number 5. We have to be willing to recognize that God is able to redeem and repurpose various identities. For instance, the city of Jerusalem was occupied by people who were not God's people. But what's really interesting is that after David captured the city of Jerusalem, God didn't go around and say, okay, the city of Jerusalem is no longer called Jerusalem, it's called something totally different. No, God took the name of that city, kept it as it was, and repurposed it for his glory. The city of Jerusalem, which used to be a dwelling for people who were not believers in Yahweh, then became the place where God's very presence dwelt in physical form. The city that comes down from God at the very end of time is called the New Jerusalem. We have to recognize that even for things that might be bad or might just appear to be bad from our perspective, God can take those things, those identities, and repurpose them for something that will serve for his glory. And even if you have problems with LGBT plus identities, maybe you have a conception of those things that just makes you think of sin when you hear those things. What if you could just stop for a second and consider, what if God is trying to do something with those identities? What if God is trying to lead you to recognize increasingly the redeemable and redemptive qualities in queer identity? Ultimately, this is a call for us to be more nuanced in our thinking about queer identity. We need to be very careful that we don't unwittingly destroy a perfectly beautiful and necessary part of a demographic's experience. I think the best way for Christians to really show that they believe that queer people are children of God is if they will learn to celebrate the beauty in queer identity. I encourage Christians to foster an environment, a culture of authenticity, where queer people won't feel as if they have to hide their identity as queer people in order for them to receive love and affection from Christians or from God. All of our identities matter because all of our identities give a picture of who we are and what God is doing in our lives. So the next time that someone in your church comes out to you, or you find out that one of your friends is transgender, or you find out that your niece or nephew is bisexual, instead of jumping to conclusions, learn to listen. Understand that if you tell someone to hide part of who they are, you'll never be able to know that person for all that they are. Remember that in the same way that you want to be loved for everything that you are, queer people want to be loved for everything that they are. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, peace and God bless. Hey YouTubers, I hope you really enjoyed this video and I hope it was beneficial for you. If it was, I invite you to like, share, and comment below, please, respectfully. And also I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you are alerted when I release any more content. Thank you so much.